The BloodRayne series is a weird one. It's never really had a chance to grow and become a proper franchise. Yet when Majesco held the rights, they tried their hardest to do so, spawning a comic series and 3 god-awful films. When it comes to the games, there's only 3 of them, and each one is different. And with that, the series was never able to find its footing. That doesn't mean the games are bad, but let's just say it's difficult being a BloodRayne fan. From the original BloodRayne being more of a gothic horror adventure taking place before World War II, to BloodRayne 2 skipping ahead to modern times, the 2 games are vastly different from each other. So much that the sequel broadened its appeal to a larger base of players. It simplified combat and focused more on action. Then the series would go silent. A 3rd game never happened. A game for the PSP was cancelled, and it wasn't until 2010 when 2 new games were announced. A downloadable only title called BloodRayne Betrayal, and a game for the Nintendo 3DS called BloodRayne The Shroud. By that point, any new BloodRayne game was welcomed. Only BloodRayne Betrayal came out, and likely due to poor sales of that, BloodRayne The Shroud was cancelled, and once again, the series went silent. But if you know anything about Betrayal, you know it's one of the most divisive entries in the series, both critically and by the fans. Some critics praised its challenge, others called it one of the worst games due to its frustration and controls. Betrayal was probably the worst way to reintroduce the series. It had been 7 years since the release of BloodRayne 2, and switching to a side-scroller with a 2D art style was a major shift. Rayne herself still retains her iconic look, and the game perfectly captures those gothic vibes present in the original. From starting in the eerie night outside Kagan's castle, to Rayne making her way through the castle itself. It holds classic Victorian-inspired themes and designs. When it comes to developer way forward, they made what you would expect from a way forward game, and to their credit, they did honor the idea of the series pretty well. Rayne's abilities are translated perfectly. Her acrobatics allow her to jump, flip, and wall bounce when need be. She has a gun that can be used as a quick way of killing or knocking enemies down, but ammo is limited. And of course she has her arm blades, which leads into a gory flurry of combos to slice and dice. Later on in the game, she gains access to a stun gun that spews out a powerful beam. This all results in a game that combines combat and platforming, which considering how Rayne herself operates makes sense. If Rayne is low on health, when she hits a checkpoint fountain her health returns. Or she can do what has always been one of my favorites in the series and grapple an enemy to drain them of their health. So I'm glad WayForward has honored Rayne's abilities, her anger, and her rage. But since the game follows a new style and has more of an arcade edge to it, this does allow the developers to experiment and try something new. Like this surprise boss fight against a mechanical crab. Something that would be utterly ridiculous in 3D works well in 2D. That said, the problem lies within the game's difficulty, which will make or break the experience. The game isn't impossible to play, but the further the game goes, the more difficult and punishing it gets. I like to think of BloodRayne Betrayal as a Soulsborne kind of game because you end up dying a lot. You need to understand the mechanics, you need to know how each level works because so much is thrown at you. And even when you know how everything works, something will happen. Some kind of enemy projectile or a missed landing will ruin the flow and make you restart. It's often the simplest of things that create this frustration. Let alone when we get to the boss fights. Some are decent, but typically all are in major pain. Like the boss fight with Kagan himself is almost unfair. You start with a number of enemies to fight, electricity to avoid, and once that's handled, Kagan's projectiles force you to dash so you don't lose more health than you already have. It's not impossible, but it's a lot to manage. This isn't a game that is beginner friendly. It may start out like that, but doesn't end that way. You never know what's coming next, and often you need to think quickly in order to proceed. Yet sometimes the game will punish you for the choices you make. Like this one time, I had to propel Rayne across acid on a makeshift raft. In order to do this, you need to shoot your way forward. But if you're out of ammo or you don't have enough ammo because you didn't find enough red skulls to upgrade the amount you can carry, you're punished. Unless you die and restart at checkpoint, Rayne won't have enough to proceed. Or jumping up and suddenly having a random missile hit you into acid, forcing you to restart again. Too many of these traps and spikes and saw blades make me want to throw the controller at the screen. It's moments like this that just kills the entire experience, and it all could have been forgiven if the story was good. Story-wise, it's extremely basic. Instead of continuing the narrative and picking up from BloodRayne 2, Betrayal does its own thing. Outside of Rayne, the Brimstone Society, and her father Kagan somehow returning to be the big bad, Betrayal ignores the story and lore BloodRayne and BloodRayne 2 built up. Really, Betrayal's story is second to the gameplay. Even a mysterious new character ends up being utterly pointless minus his special ability. It's probably a lot asking for a game like Betrayal to have a deeper narrative, but as I said earlier, it's difficult being a BloodRayne fan. When all the lore is ignored, and it's confusing if the story is set in the original timeline or not, it's just disappointing. And it's a bummer that Betrayal went the way it did, because if plans worked out, we would have gotten BloodRayne the Shroud, a game we know nothing about as nothing was ever shown of it. But judging from the subtitle and the fact that the Shroud was a major story component in BloodRayne 2, we might have actually gotten that continuation, or even conclusion. However, skip ahead years later and the BloodRayne IP is purchased by Ziggurat Interactive. Despite the lack of any new BloodRayne games, they have done an excellent job at enhancing and re-releasing all three games. With this comes BloodRayne Betrayal Fresh Bites, an updated re-release for modern platforms, and I will tell you, this is the version of the game you need to play, as it has a ton of quality of life improvements. In fact, Fresh Bites made me appreciate Betrayal than when it originally came out, and it makes such a difference to not struggle playing through this. Now, I like a challenge, but Betrayal was frustrating. I still have yet to beat the original. Both Fresh Bites and its added easier difficulty, I was finally able to experience the entire game. And more importantly, it brings some much needed life to what is already a stale story. It makes a major difference to have full voice acting, and it's great to hear Laura Bailey as Rayne once again, even if it's in a limited capacity. The character of Rayne was only so great because of Bailey's voice. She made that character who she is. So with the story being very forgettable, disappointing even, the voice acting makes all the difference. BloodRayne Betrayal isn't necessarily a bad game, but like so many others, I have mixed feelings on Betrayal. For the first game in the series after so many years, Betrayal wasn't the way to reintroduce it. What should have been an exciting return was the final nail in the coffin, and Betrayal's failure determined the fate of the series. The BloodRayne series has always deserved better. Thankfully, something like BloodRayne Betrayal Fresh Bites greatly improved the original and turned it into what became an enjoyable game. I still don't find it to be the best in the series, and it shouldn't be a game that introduces you to the series, but a lot of what makes a BloodRayne game is here. I still remain hopeful for a brand new BloodRayne game. A sequel, a remake, a reboot, something that will make Betrayal not be the last game in the series, and hopefully not another 2D game that will divide critics and fans. What are your thoughts on BloodRayne Betrayal? Did you like this game or did you hate it? Let us know down in the comments. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, and ring that bell to be notified about future content. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.